Deep in the heart of the countryside, where the fog clings to the earth like a shroud and the trees whisper secrets to the wind, lies a village forgotten by time. Blackthorn, they call it, a place where the cobblestone streets wind like serpents, and the air carries the faint scent of damp earth and decay. Here, the sun rarely pierces the heavy clouds, and the nights are so still, you can hear the silence itself. But there is one place in Blackthorn that even the bravest souls dare not approach. At the center of the village, hidden behind a tangle of overgrown vines and crumbling stone, stands the Sinister Well. Its dark waters ripple with an unnatural stillness, as though something beneath the surface watches and waits. For centuries, the well has been the source of whispered tales, of children who vanished without a trace, of villagers driven mad by its haunting whispers, and of a curse so ancient, its origins are lost to time. Tonight we descend into the shadows of Blackthorn to uncover the chilling truth behind the legend of the Sinister Well. But be warned, some stories are best left untold, and some horrors are better left unseen. Stay with us, and you'll discover why the well's secrets have haunted this village for generations, and why its darkness may never truly be escaped. Now turning to the village of Blackthorn itself, a place that seems to exist in a world of its own. The cobblestone streets, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, twist and turn like the veins of some ancient beast. Crumbling cottages lean precariously, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of time and neglect. The air is thick with an oppressive fog that clings to everything, muffling sounds and distorting shapes until the village feels like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. The villagers, a tight-knit yet wary group, move through the mist like shadows, their faces etched with lines of worry and suspicion. They speak in hushed tones, their words laced with superstition and fear. To them, the Sinister Well is not just a legend. It is a living, breathing curse, a dark presence that has haunted Blackthorn for as long as anyone can remember. They warn of its whispers, its pull, and the terrible fate that awaits those who dare to look too closely. It is into this world that Eleanor Graves arrives, a journalist with a reputation for uncovering the truth behind the darkest of tales. She steps off the creaking wooden cart that brought her to Blackthorn, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of the village. Her curiosity is piqued, but so is her unease. The villagers eye her with a mix of curiosity and distrust, their whispered warnings about the well following her like a shadow. Eleanor is determined to uncover the truth, but even she cannot shake the feeling that the village itself is watching her, waiting to see if she will become just another victim of the Sinister Well's dark legacy. As she begins her investigation, the fog seems to close in around her, and the whispers of the villagers grow louder, more insistent. The stage is set, and the mystery of Blackthorn is about to unfold. Now turning to the legend of the Sinister Well, a tale as old as Blackthorn itself. The well stands at the heart of the village, a crumbling stone structure that seems to pulse with a life of its own. It is said to have been built centuries ago over a cursed spring, its waters tainted by something far older and far darker than anyone can comprehend. The stories surrounding it are as numerous as they are terrifying. Generations of villagers have whispered of children who vanished after daring to peer into its depths, their laughter swallowed by the darkness below. Others speak of villagers driven mad by the well's whispers, their minds unraveling as they claim to hear voices calling to them from the void. And then there are the nights when the well glows with an eerie, unnatural light, casting long shadows that seem to move on their own. These tales are not just stories, they are warnings, passed down from parent to child, each generation adding its own layer of dread. But beneath the surface of these chilling accounts lies a deeper truth, one that hints at a dark, ancient ritual tied to the well's creation. A ritual that went horribly wrong, unleashing a curse that has plagued Blackthorn ever since. As Eleanor delves deeper into the village's history, she begins to uncover fragments of this truth, pieces of a puzzle that suggest the well is not just a cursed relic, it is a gateway to something far more sinister. Now turning to Eleanor's first encounter with the Sinister Well, a moment that would mark the beginning of her descent into the village's darkest secrets. As she approached the ancient structure, a strange pull seemed to draw her closer, as if the well itself was alive and reaching out to her. The air grew colder with each step, and a faint, almost imperceptible whisper brushed against her ears, though no one else was around. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, her skin prickling with unease, as though unseen eyes followed her every move. The well's dark waters seemed to ripple faintly, though there was no wind to disturb them. It was then that she noticed a figure standing in the shadows. Old Thomas, the village's reclusive historian. His weathered face was etched with a mix of fear and urgency as he stepped forward, his voice low and trembling. "You shouldn't be here," he warned, his eyes darting toward the well. "It's not just a cursed place, it's something far worse. Leave while you still can." But his words only deepened Eleanor's curiosity, and as she pressed him for answers, he hesitated, his gaze lingering on the well. "There are things in this world," he said cryptically, "that should never be disturbed. And that well, it's one of them." With that, he turned and disappeared into the fog, leaving Eleanor alone with the well and the growing sense that she was standing on the edge of something far beyond her understanding. Now turning to the central mystery that would consume Eleanor's investigation, the disappearance of Sarah Whitaker. Sarah, a young woman known for her bright spirit and kind heart, had vanished without a trace just days before Eleanor arrived in Blackthorn. The last place she was seen, near the Sinister Well. The villagers spoke of her disappearance in hushed tones, their voices trembling with a mix of fear and denial. Some claimed she had simply run away, while others whispered of darker possibilities, their eyes darting toward the well as if it held the answers. Eleanor, driven by both her journalistic instincts and a growing sense of unease, began to piece together the events leading up to Sarah's vanishing. She spoke to Sarah's family first, her mother, pale and hollow-eyed, recounted how Sarah had become increasingly withdrawn in the days before she disappeared. She kept talking about the well, her mother said, her voice breaking. She said she heard voices calling her name, but I thought it was just her imagination. I told her to stay away, but she wouldn't listen. Friends shared similar stories, describing how Sarah had grown obsessed with the well, spending hours near its edge, staring into its dark waters as if searching for something. One friend, a young man named Daniel, recalled the last time he saw her. She was different, he said, his voice heavy with regret. She kept saying the well was alive, that it was trying to tell her something. I thought she was just stressed, but now I don't know what to think. As Eleanor listened to these accounts, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Sarah wasn't the first to disappear near the well, and the villagers' reluctance to speak of it only deepened her suspicion. The well wasn't just a cursed relic of the past. It was a living, breathing force, and Sarah's disappearance was just the latest in a long line of tragedies. With each revelation, Eleanor felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on her, driving her to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As the next challenge unfolds, Eleanor's determination to solve the mystery of Sarah's disappearance leads her deeper into the village secrets, where the answers may lie hidden in the shadows of the past. Now turning to the next phase of her investigation, Eleanor found herself standing in the dimly lit village archives, a room filled with dusty shelves and crumbling papers. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment and decay, a fitting atmosphere for the secrets she hoped to uncover. Determined to find answers, she began sifting through the records, her fingers brushing against yellowed pages and faded ink. It didn't take long for her to stumble upon something significant, a diary from the early 1800s, its brittle pages filled with the frantic handwriting of a man named Samuel Hargrove. His entries spoke of a young girl who had vanished near the well, her disappearance eerily similar to Sarah's. Samuel described how the villagers had whispered of a curse, how the girl had been drawn to the well by an unseen force, her final moments marked by screams that echoed through the night. Eleanor's heart raced as she read, the parallels between the two cases impossible to ignore. But the diary was only the beginning. Among the stacks of papers, she found a map, its edges frayed and its ink faded but still legible. It depicted the village of Blackthorn, but with one striking difference, a network of tunnels snaking beneath the streets, converging at a single point, the Sinister Well. The map was annotated with cryptic notes, references to rituals and sacrifices, and warnings of a gateway that should never be opened. Eleanor's mind reeled as she pieced together the implications. The well wasn't just a cursed relic, it was a portal, a connection to something far more sinister than she had ever imagined. As she continued her search, she uncovered more records, each one adding to the growing sense of dread. There were accounts of other disappearances, each one tied to the well, each one ending in tragedy. The villagers' reluctance to speak of it now made sense. They knew the truth, or at least a part of it, and they were too afraid to confront it. But Eleanor couldn't turn away. The more she learned, the more she realized that Sarah's disappearance was just one piece of a much larger puzzle, a puzzle that led straight into the heart of darkness. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor knew she had to follow the trail, no matter where it led. The archives had given her clues, but they had also raised more questions than answers. What lay beneath the well? What was the true nature of the curse? And most importantly, could she uncover the truth before it was too late? The answers, she suspected, were hidden in the shadows of the past, waiting to be brought into the light. Now turning to the next phase of her investigation, Eleanor found herself standing at the entrance of the hidden tunnels beneath Blackthorn, her lantern casting flickering shadows on the damp, crumbling walls. Old Thomas, the village reclusive historian, stood beside her, his face etched with reluctance and unease. He had warned her against this path, but Eleanor's determination outweighed his caution. Together, they stepped into the darkness, the air growing colder with each step, the weight of the earth pressing down on them. The tunnels were a labyrinth of decay, their walls slick with moisture and covered in strange, ancient symbols that seemed to pulse faintly in the dim light. Eleanor ran her fingers over the carvings, her breath catching as she recognized some of the same markings she had seen in the village archives. They were warnings, she realized, etched into the stone by hands long gone, a desperate attempt to keep something buried. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, the air thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something metallic, like old blood. Distant echoes filled the tunnels, faint whispers, and the occasional scrape of stone against stone. Eleanor's heart pounded as she strained to listen, her mind conjuring images of unseen figures lurking just beyond the reach of her lantern's glow. Old Thomas muttered under his breath, his voice trembling as he recounted fragments of the village's dark history, tales of a secret society that had once gathered in these very tunnels, performing unspeakable rituals at the well above. As they pressed on, Eleanor's lantern revealed more evidence of the society's presence. Fragments of blackened candles, rusted tools, and scraps of parchment covered in cryptic writings. One passageway led to a chamber, its walls lined with crude altars and stained with what could only be dried blood. The sight sent a chill down her spine, but it was the discovery of a journal, its pages brittle and yellowed, that truly unnerved her. The entries spoke of sacrifices, of a ritual meant to open a gateway to another realm, and of the curse that had been unleashed when the ritual failed. The deeper they went, the more Eleanor felt the weight of the past closing in around her. The tunnels seemed alive, their walls whispering secrets she could almost understand. Old Thomas grew more agitated, his warnings becoming frantic as they neared the heart of the labyrinth. But Eleanor couldn't turn back now. The answers she sought were here, buried in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered. With each step, the tension grew, the sense of being watched becoming unbearable. The tunnels were no longer just a physical space. They were a gateway to the unknown, a place where the past and present collided in a storm of fear and desperation. Eleanor knew she was close to the truth, but she also knew that the truth came with a price, and as the echoes grew louder, she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever lay ahead, it was waiting for her. Now turning to the heart of the mystery, Eleanor and old Thomas stood in the chamber, the air heavy with the weight of centuries-old secrets. The journal in Eleanor's hands trembled as she read aloud the final entry, her voice barely above a whisper. It spoke of a ritual, a desperate attempt by a secretive cult to achieve immortality. The well, they believed, was a gateway to eternal life, a conduit to a realm beyond death. But something went terribly wrong. The ritual, performed under a blood-red moon, required a sacrifice, a life offered willingly to the well's dark waters. The cultists believed this would grant them power over death itself, but as the final words of the incantation echoed through the night, the well did not grant them immortality. Instead, it unleashed a curse. The souls of the sacrificed were trapped within its depths, bound to the well for eternity, and the curse demanded more. Old Thomas's voice broke the silence, his words heavy with regret. "The well feeds on life," he said, his eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting them to move. "It needs new victims to sustain itself. That's why people disappear. That's why Sarah vanished. The curse takes them, one by one, to keep the cycle alive." Eleanor's mind raced as the pieces fell into place. The disappearances, the whispers, the eerie glow, it all made sense now. The well was not just a cursed relic of the past. It was alive, a malevolent force that preyed on the living. And Sarah, like so many before her, had been drawn to its depths, her life consumed to feed the curse. The journal detailed the cult's final moments, their horror as they realized what they had unleashed. The well's waters had turned black, and the air around it grew cold, even in the heat of summer. Those who had performed the ritual were the first to fall, their souls claimed by the very force they had sought to control. But the curse did not end with them. It spread, infecting the village, its tendrils reaching out to claim new victims. As Eleanor closed the journal, a chill ran through her. The curse was not just a story, it was a living, breathing entity, and it was still active. The well's hunger was insatiable, and it would not stop until it had claimed enough lives to break free of its prison. Sarah's disappearance was not an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern, a cycle of death that had plagued Blackthorn for generations. Old Thomas placed a trembling hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "You must understand," he said, his voice barely audible. "The well is not just a place. It's a force, a darkness that feeds on fear and despair, and it will not rest until it has consumed everything." Eleanor's resolve hardened. She had come too far to turn back now. The truth was within her grasp, but it came with a terrible realization. To break the curse, she would have to confront the well itself, to face the darkness that had claimed so many lives. And as the echoes of the past whispered around her, she knew that the price of uncovering the truth might be more than she was willing to pay. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor steeled herself for what lay ahead. The well's curse was no longer just a legend. It was a living nightmare, and she was about to step into its heart. With the next phase of the journey in sight, Eleanor stood at the edge of the Sinister Well, her heart pounding in her chest. The air around her was thick with an unnatural stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She glanced down into the abyss, the darkness seeming to stretch endlessly below. The well's pull was undeniable, a magnetic force that tugged at her very soul. She knew there was no turning back now. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor secured the rope around her waist, the coarse fibers biting into her palms as she prepared to descend. Old Thomas stood nearby, his face pale and drawn, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "Be careful," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The well will try to deceive you. It will show you things, the things you don't want to see, but you must stay strong." Eleanor nodded, though her hands shook as she gripped the rope. She began her descent, the walls of the well closing in around her. The deeper she went, the colder it became, the air turning icy against her skin. The faint sound of whispers reached her ears, growing louder with every step. They were not words she could understand, but their tone was unmistakable pleading, desperate, and filled with sorrow. As she descended further, the darkness seemed to shift and swirl around her. Visions began to materialize, flickering like shadows on the walls. She saw faces of those who had been claimed by the well. A young girl with wide, terrified eyes. A man clutching his chest as if in agony. A woman reaching out, her mouth open in a silent scream. Each vision was more vivid than the last, their pain and fear palpable. Eleanor's breath quickened as the whispers grew louder, the voices overlapping into a cacophony of despair. She tried to focus, to remind herself that these were only illusions, but the weight of their suffering pressed down on her. The well was testing her, probing her mind for weakness. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to keep moving, to push through the torment. Then she felt it, a presence vast and ancient, lurking in the depths below. It was not a physical thing, but a force, a consciousness that radiated malice and hunger. The well's curse was alive, and it was aware of her. It reached out, its tendrils of darkness wrapping around her mind, trying to pull her into its grasp. Eleanor's vision blurred as the force overwhelmed her senses. She saw flashes of the ritual, the cultists chanting, their faces twisted with desperation. She felt their fear as the curse took hold, their souls torn from their bodies and trapped within the well. The images were so vivid, so real that for a moment she forgot where she was. But then a single thought broke through the chaos. Sarah, the young woman who had vanished, whose fate was still unknown. Eleanor clung to that thought, using it as an anchor to ground herself. She could not let the well win. She had to find a way to break the curse, to free the souls trapped within. Summoning every ounce of strength, Eleanor pushed back against the force, her determination cutting through the darkness like a blade. The whispers faded, the visions receded, and for a moment there was silence. She took a shaky breath, her body trembling with exhaustion, but she was not done yet. The well's curse was still there, waiting, watching, and Eleanor knew that the hardest part was yet to come. With the next challenge unfolding, she steeled herself for the final confrontation, her resolve unshaken. The darkness had tested her, but it had not broken her, and as she descended further into the abyss, she vowed to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Now turning to the final confrontation, Eleanor stood at the heart of the well's darkness, her mind racing with the weight of what she had learned. The counter-ritual was her only hope, but the cost was unimaginable, a life for a life. The thought of sacrificing someone, even to save countless others, filled her with dread. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she wrestled with the moral weight of her decision. Could she truly condemn someone to death, even if it meant breaking the curse? As the whispers around her grew louder, the entity within the well began to take shape. It was no longer just a force, but a presence, a shadowy figure with eyes that burned like embers. It spoke, its voice a low, guttural rumble that seemed to echo from the depths of the earth. "You cannot win," it hissed. "The curse is eternal. Your efforts are futile." Eleanor's heart pounded, but she refused to back down. "I won't let you take anyone else," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I'll find a way to stop you." The entity laughed, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. "You think you can defy me? You are nothing but a mortal, weak and insignificant. Your soul will join the others, trapped here for eternity." Just as the entity's tendrils of darkness began to close in around her, a voice broke through the chaos. "Wait." Eleanor turned to see old Thomas standing at the edge of the well, his face pale but resolute. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "I'll be the sacrifice." Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. "Thomas, no, you don't have to do this." But Thomas shook his head. "I was part of the cult that created this curse. I helped bring this evil into the world. It's my responsibility to end it." The entity's laughter grew louder, its form shifting as it turned its attention to Thomas. "Ah, the traitor returns. How fitting that you should be the one to seal your own fate." Eleanor's mind raced. She couldn't let Thomas die, but she also knew that without a sacrifice, the curse would never be broken. The weight of the decision pressed down on her, threatening to crush her resolve. Thomas stepped forward, his eyes locked on the entity. "I've spent my life running from what I've done," he said. "But not anymore. If my death can undo the harm I've caused, then I'll gladly give my life." The entity's form seemed to ripple, its laughter fading into a low, menacing growl. "So be it," it said. Eleanor watched in horror as the darkness enveloped Thomas, his form dissolving into the shadows. The well trembled, the walls cracking as a blinding light erupted from its depths. The whispers ceased, the visions faded, and for a moment there was only silence. Then the light dimmed, and the well was still. The curse was broken, but the cost had been devastating. Eleanor sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she stared into the empty abyss. The final confrontation had come to an end, but the scars it left behind would remain forever. Eleanor had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the price of victory was a burden she would carry for the rest of her life. Now turning to the aftermath, the village of Blackthorn began to stir with a strange, fragile calm. The once murky waters of the Sinister Well now shimmered with an unnatural clarity, as if the darkness had been purged from its depths. The oppressive fog that had clung to the village for generations began to lift, revealing a sky that seemed brighter than anyone could remember. Yet, despite the newfound peace, an air of unease lingered, as though the village itself was holding its breath, waiting for something unseen to stir once more. Eleanor stood at the edge of the well, her hands trembling as she gazed into its now placid waters. Relief washed over her in waves, but it was a bittersweet victory. Thomas was gone, his sacrifice a heavy weight on her conscience. She had come to Blackthorn seeking answers, but she had never imagined the cost of finding them. The faces of the missing villagers, including Sarah Whitaker, flashed in her mind. They had been found wandering the outskirts of the village, dazed and confused, with no memory of where they had been or what had happened to them. Sarah's family had wept with joy at her return, but Eleanor couldn't shake the guilt that gnawed at her. She had saved them, yes, but at what cost? The thought of Thomas's final moments haunted her, his voice echoing in her mind as he stepped into the darkness. "If my death can undo the harm I've caused, then I'll gladly give my life." As the days passed, the village began to heal. The villagers, once wary and superstitious, now spoke of hope and renewal. The Sinister Well, once a symbol of fear, became a place of quiet reflection. Yet, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The well's waters, though clear, seemed to hold a faint, almost imperceptible glow at night. The whispers that had once filled the air were gone, but sometimes in the stillness, she thought she could hear a faint, distant hum, like the echo of a voice long silenced. One evening, as she packed her belongings to leave Blackthorn, Eleanor paused by the well one last time. The air was still, the village silent, but a chill ran down her spine. She knelt by the edge, her reflection staring back at her from the glassy surface. For a moment, she thought she saw something move beneath the water, a shadow, fleeting and indistinct. She blinked and it was gone. Eleanor rose to her feet, her heart pounding. She told herself it was nothing, just her imagination playing tricks on her. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that the curse wasn't entirely gone. The well had been quieted, but not destroyed. Somewhere, in the depths of its ancient stones, the darkness still lingered, waiting for the right moment to rise again. With a heavy heart, Eleanor turned away from the well and walked toward the edge of the village. She had faced the darkness and emerged, but the scars it left behind would remain with her forever. As she left Blackthorn behind, she couldn't help but wonder if the Sinister Well's story was truly over, or if it was only the beginning of something far more sinister. Now turning to the conclusion, Eleanor stepped onto the dusty road leading out of Blackthorn, her footsteps heavy with the weight of all she had witnessed. The village, once shrouded in mystery and fear, now lay behind her, its streets quiet and its people cautiously hopeful. Yet as she walked, the memory of the Sinister Well lingered in her mind like a shadow she couldn't outrun. The journey had changed her in ways she couldn't fully understand. She had come seeking answers, but what she found was a truth far darker than she had ever imagined. Thomas's sacrifice had saved the village, but it had also left her with questions that would haunt her for the rest of her days. What had truly been unleashed by the cult's ancient ritual? And had the curse truly been broken? Or was it merely biding its time, waiting for another moment to strike? As the road stretched ahead, Eleanor couldn't help but reflect on the themes that had defined her time in Blackthorn. Sacrifice had been the key to breaking the curse, but it had come at a terrible cost. Redemption, too, had played its part, as Thomas sought to atone for his past by giving his life to save others. And yet, the enduring power of dark legends remained, a reminder that some stories are never truly finished. The Sinister Well had been quieted, but its story was far from over. Legends like these, born of fear and whispered through generations, have a way of persisting, of finding new ways to seep into the lives of those who dare to uncover their secrets. Eleanor knew she would carry the weight of what she had learned with her, a constant reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. As she disappeared into the horizon, the village of Blackthorn faded behind her, its secrets buried but not forgotten. The well's waters may have turned clear, but the darkness beneath its surface still stirred, waiting for the next curious soul to peer into its depths. And so the legend of the Sinister Well lived on, a chilling reminder that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. If you enjoyed this dark tale of mystery and sacrifice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more eerie stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, remember, some secrets are best left buried,